Despite missing the playoffs, Monte McNair says he has no regrets with how he handled this season for the Sacramento Kings. You'll hear from the general manager and head coach Mike Brown right here on today's episode of Locked On Kings.
You are Locked On Kings, your daily Sacramento Kings podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
And now, ladies and gentlemen, it is that time for another episode of Locked On Kings.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Kings, your podcast hub for Sacramento Kings coverage all season long. Today's episode is brought to you by Monopoly Go. I admit it, I have a competitive side, and it's a big fan of Monopoly Go, the mobile hit twist on classic Monopoly. So join your friends and download Monopoly Go now for free on the App Store or on Google Play. My name is Matt George. I have the privilege of being your host here. I'm a Sacramento sports anchor and reporter for ABC 10 News, and I apologize. I intended to have this episode out days ago, but unfortunately, the end of season sickness hit me hard. Now, typically when the season ends and the Kings are done, I always get sick. It always happens, just the body's way of like releasing everything and dealing with whether it's the travel or the hours or whatever it is. I always get sick. And this year hit me pretty hard. So I was down for the count for the past couple of days, but I'm back. I know this content is a little bit late. This audio from Monty and Mike that you're going to hear today happened earlier this week, so you may have already heard a lot of this stuff, but I'm doing things a little different from the player exit interviews. I'm going to play for you like clip by clip of the most important clips from Monty and Mike's pressers, and then we'll discuss them and talk about them a little bit just to make it different because you've probably already heard some of these things. You'll hear my thoughts on it. I want to know your thoughts on some of the things that Monte McNair and Mike Brown had to say. So feel free to chime in. You can do so in the comment section if you're watching on YouTube. If you are listening, or even if you're watching on YouTube, but if you're listening to the audio version of this podcast, feel free to hit me up on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. You can email me at any time to mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. Let's start with Kings general manager Monte McNair. And one of the questions I got the opportunity to ask him was if he had any regrets about this, the trade deadline this year, where he elected to really do nothing while teams like the Dallas Mavericks made some moves, and it ended up making a pretty massive difference.
Monty, building off a lot of what you just said there, most of us, especially me, ignorant to the conversations that were happening during the trade deadline, for example, but you see the jump and how different the Dallas Mavericks looked after the trade deadline and other teams, not just in the West, but around the league did. Is there any regret or remorse to staying put or not making any moves on the deadline, considering how the season ended? Or are you able to kind of separate yourself from what other teams do and just focus on you?
Yeah, we focus on ourselves. And, I think one benefit we'll have on those teams going forward is probably more flexibility, more draft assets, and how can we put those best to use. At the same time last year, we were able to, stay healthy post deadline and make a run. And, who knows if Kevin Malik, are able to Trey as well, was down for a while. If those guys stay healthy, maybe we get another couple wins and we're in a better position. Every move won't always work out. I love the process that our group goes through. And I think, it was funny. I was talking to my 5-year-old, he's playing baseball, and he got upset when he got out. I said, what the best baseball players, they only make it 3 out of 10 times. And right, all of these things, all these batting averages, all these decisions, we're not going to bat 1,000, but, we want to just put ourselves in the best spot that we can make the next move that we need to do, the right move, and all those types of things. So, no regret. Excited for where we are going forward because I think we'll have a lot of opportunity.
So a couple of things that I want to respond to there. The first thing, I acknowledge this in asking the actual question of Monty, and I should bring it up here. We don't know the conversations that did happen around the trade deadline. We know that there was significant interest in Pascal Siakam. He ended up going to the Indiana Pacers. A lot of that had to do with Pascal's willingness to re-sign with the Pacers and not re-sign with the Sacramento Kings. And obviously, Monte McNair didn't want to trade away the assets that it was going to take to land a Siakam without feeling confident or some sort of assurance that it wasn't just going to be a few months rental. Because even if Pascal Siakam was on the Kings, and let's say the Kings were still playing right now, great. That would be awesome for right now. But the reality is, even with Pascal Siakam on this roster and the Kings staying relatively healthy, let's say Malik Monk and Kevin Huerter don't go down, although maybe Kevin Huerter's gone as part of that Pascal Siakam deal, I still don't necessarily think the Sacramento Kings are a championship contender. And the only way to make it worth it for Pascal to join you for a few months and then leave is for you to get a title out of it. And obviously that wasn't the case for the Kings. We also know there's always been interest or connections with Kyle Kuzma. Clearly, there were breakdowns there. Who knows if how aggressive those conversations were and if there was a hang up on how much the Kings were willing or not willing to trade away. I know a lot of teams were asking for Keegan Murray in conversations. So we don't necessarily know how hard Monty was working at the trade deadline to get a deal done, and nothing got done. So we have to take that into account when we talk about the Kings not doing anything at the trade deadline, because the term, and I've used it before, the sitting on your hands, it's not a fair way of describing what happens on the trade. It's not like Monte McNair slept in and slept through the trade deadline, right? He knows what's going on. He and the Kings were trying to make moves. Ultimately, they decided what was out there wasn't good for them. Now, this is where that perspective changes a little bit, though, because we go into this offseason now where this offseason is so important for Sacramento. They clearly do need to make some sort of moves. Monty doesn't get a pass, in my opinion, for going through this offseason and aggressively pursuing certain things and nothing works out, and then he just runs this roster back. Now, I'd rather him not make a move than make a move for the sake of making a move, even if he doesn't like it. But you don't get a pass for, oh, we tried and the other side just didn't want to work with us, right? Because other general managers are able to get deals done that ultimately help their team. You're expected to do the same. So that's the difference between Monty's approach to the trade deadline, to which he had the time to not make the moves, right? He said there, like, had the Kings stayed healthier, maybe they'd be in a different spot, which is exactly what happened to them last season after the trade deadline, when all they did was trade for Kessler Edwards. So I understood Monty's response there. I didn't expect him to tell me that he regretted anything. I have to imagine, though, based off of how the rest of the season went and how teams like Dallas, who made trades, how their season went, I have to imagine there was a feeling of dang it. But if he doesn't want to say that there's regrets, that's fine. He also did mention there at the beginning of that answer too, that because the Kings didn't make any moves and other teams did, it gives the Kings maybe more flexibility with assets to make some moves this summer. That's great. But again, you have to use those assets and actually make moves. It's not good to have this treasure trove of advantages with picks or with players or whatever, contracts, and not actually use them to your advantage, right? At that point, you're just wasting them away. So I understood that answer by Monty, and I appreciated him giving the question the time. Now, of course, the major question this offseason is on Malik Monk, right? Of course, Monty was asked about Malik.
I think the fans, the love they have for him, that's reciprocated. We love Malik. He's obviously been a huge part of what we've done the last couple of years. Sadly missed him at some key points down the stretch. We could have used Malik, but and not just what he does on the floor, but off the floor, his attitude and mentality, and obviously his swag and everything that Malik brings. So, obviously we'll have those conversations when the time comes, but what he's done for us has been a huge part of our resurgence the last 2 years. For us, I won't get any of those specifics, but, credit to Malik. He gets to make a free agent decision. It's, I think we'll put our best foot forward. We he loves it here. We love him. And so hopefully we'll be able to do that when the time comes. Yeah, I won't get into like the obviously the cap and numbers part of it. I think the great thing, I think number one thing you want is that you want that player to be here, and Malik wants to be here. Number two is we want him, and we love Malik, and we know he fits, right? He fits what we're doing. I don't know if the sixth man's been finalized yet. He should win sixth man of the year pretty clearly. I don't know. You guys all get to vote for that, so you guys can tell me. But what he does for us, obviously on the court, fantastic. But really, I think the off-court stuff is what makes him even more special for this group. And so I think for Malik, credit to him. He gets to make a decision, and we'll hope it's here.
Now, I won't go as far as to say that there's desperation there from Monty and the Kings to bring Malik back, but what I took away from that in person and then just now watching it back, Malik has all the power, right? We already knew this, but Malik has all the power. Monte McNair is making it very known that the Kings want him back. Talked about his fit, talked about how important he is off the court in addition to on the court, right? In my opinion, within what the realm of the possibilities of what the Kings within the collective bargaining agreement can give Malik Monk, they're going to give him to keep him here, which means like if Malik Monk wants to start, Malik Monk will start if he stays here, right? I'm 100% confident in that. I know Mike Brown liked Malik off the bench over these last 2 years for reasons, but if Malik really is hung up on like the team I stay with or I sign with, I'm going to start for them. Mike Brown and the Kings are going to give him and promise him a starting spot in order to keep him here. 100%. That's not even a consideration or a concern in my mind. But will that be enough? Clearly, the Kings want Malik Monk back. Monte McNair knows how much he can offer Malik with that set amount with the early bird rights. So it's now Malik's choice, right? Ball is in Malik's court, and that's a great position to be in. If you're a player, it's a terrifying position to be in so many ways if you're the Kings, but you know what you can offer. It almost makes things simple. You put everything out on the table. You pull at his heartstrings as much as you can and say, look, it's this set amount, but we love you here. The fans love you here. The city loves you here. You have a big role here. You're going to be one of our stars. You know what we're trying to do. You know you fit. Just come back. Stay home with us. And that's the only play that the Kings really have. So, and hopefully that's enough to convince Monty Malik to re-sign. Well, going back to Monty, another aspect of this offseason with the Kings missing the playoffs is they get to keep their draft pick, which on the surface sounds like a good thing. But of course, because of how the protections are tied up in future years with the Atlanta Hawks trade that landed the Kings Kevin Huerter, it's actually not a great thing. And Monty acknowledges here in this answer talking about the pick, he would have much rather the pick just had gone to Atlanta and the Kings be worried about Oklahoma City in a first round playoff series right now.
On the first round pick front, how do you view the balance? You sound excited to get the pick, but also obviously then it now sends that one to Atlanta next year, top 12 protected. How do you view kind of the balance there and the step-in rule and just kind of the impact of that?
Yeah, I think there's been some reporting out there about, what it does to our pick packages and things. But, we have a lottery pick. We only owe one pick in the future. And so we'll have plenty of pick power, I think, to go and do whatever we want. And again, there's two ways to do those. You pick them. And I think, credit to, Phil Jabor and our staff. We've done, I think, pretty well in the draft certain years. And you can trade those. And we've done that as well. The Kevin Huerter trade in particular. So, I think we'll have opportunity there. And, look, at any time you get to pick inside the top 15, you got a chance to get a pretty darn good player. And so it's certainly I wish that pick was going to Atlanta when I was trying to figure out how to stop the Thunder right now. But, we'll use it to our advantage.
Now, I think you should be pretty reassured by those comments from Monty because he's saying, I've seen the reporting out there about what we can offer with our picks. Yes, it makes things a little bit more difficult, but Monty still believes that the Kings have plenty of pick power to go and make the improvements needed. Now, I think a lot of us are looking at a massive package with multiple first-round picks for a star, like if you're going to the Nets for like a Mikal Bridges or a player like that. I think that's what we're looking at, the pick packages and pick situations, and it gets a little muddy and it gets a little more difficult because of next year's protected pick going to Atlanta with future protections in 2026. If that pick is top 12 and stays with Sacramento. So it's all still pretty convoluted, but Monty has the confidence that the Kings have enough assets still in terms of picks. They only owe one pick. It's not like a bunch of their picks are locked up to Atlanta or other teams. They only owe one. It's just they don't know which pick it's going to be, which muddies the waters a little bit. But it's not a terrible position for the Kings to be in. Ideally, of course, they'd be playing in the playoffs right now, and they wouldn't have to worry about this pick whatsoever. But as we get deeper into the offseason, we'll actually turn our attention to the draft. And here on Locked On Kings, we're going to look at different players, different prospects, and who potentially is available at that 13, 14 spot, assuming the Kings stay there in the lottery. They have the best odds at number 13 right now after winning the tiebreaker with the Warriors. Another victory over Golden State. We'll take that. But the Kings have options with that pick as to maybe select a player. I personally don't think Mike Brown and Monte McNair want to add a rookie to this roster. Maybe one like the second round or something like that, but I don't think they're looking to a rookie to make the difference that this roster needs. That being said, they can also trade the pick on draft night. Just because they can't trade it before draft night doesn't mean they can't trade it on draft night. So maybe they use it that night to make a big move or some kind of splash to land a player that they want. So Monte McNair has options, and he made that very, very clear there. I still have another clip from Monte McNair talking about the Western Conference. I have a clip from Monte and Mike Brown talking about Mike's contract situation, and I have plenty of sound for you from Sacramento Kings head coach Mike Brown to get to. That's all coming up here in just a second. Before that, though, I want to let you know that today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is brought to you by eBay Motors. Passion, drive, and patience. The formula for winning championships is also what keeps your ride or die alive. eBay Motors is everything you need to maintain your vehicle and level it up to peak performance. Superchargers, roof racks, exhaust kits, LED headlights, and more. Whether you're into speed, power, or style, eBay Motors has got you covered. With over 122 million parts for your number one ride or die, you'll always find exactly what you're looking for. And with eBay Guaranteed Fit, your part is guaranteed to fit your ride the first time, every time, or you get your money back. Because with eBay Motors, you're burning rubber, not burning cash. With all the parts you need at the prices that you want, it's easy to make your car the MVP and bring home huge wins. Keep your ride or die alive at ebaymotors.com. Eligible items only. Exclusions apply. eBay Guaranteed Fit is only available to U.S. customers. All right, continuing on here, a couple more clips from Kings general manager Monte McNair. I also asked Monte about the Western Conference, right? Because the West is going to continue to be difficult, right? There's no reason to look at the West and go, oh, it'll be easier next year. Maybe it's not this brutal to where you have to win 48, 49 games just to get into the top six. So maybe it won't be that bad, but the teams at the top of the West are expected to still be there. The teams below the Sacramento Kings are young, exciting, and up and coming. So I don't expect there to be a lot of terrible teams in the Western Conference next year. Maybe the Warriors drop off, the Lakers drop off, or I have no idea. But the West is still expected to be pretty difficult. And I asked Monte how much pressure that puts on them to contend and compete right away and make some moves to be able to compete. And Monte makes it very clear. Like, the Kings are built to win right now.
Monte, the West this year is pretty extreme in terms of just the amount of talent overall. There's not necessarily a roadmap to look to if teams are going to stay that good or if some are going to drop off a little bit. You can't really predict that. I'm just curious, when you look at the Western Conference, the competitiveness of the Western Conference, how much pressure do you feel to make moves immediately to try and compete with that right away versus staying put, staying patient, and believing in the growth, kind of similar to like a Denver Nuggets of a few years ago?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I've been in the West now, I think 18 seasons, and it feels like it's almost always like this. So, I think last year, for really, a cornucopia of reasons, we were able to get to the 3 seed, win 48. We were rather healthy. That middle part of the West was more centered around 44 to 46, and we were able to come out on top. Some career years from guys, and this year, we saw that the depth of that 46 was, I think, would have been the 4 seed last year. And this year we had 2 teams facing off in the 9-10 game with 46 wins. So, but that's what the West is, and that's what we're competing against. And I think you got 10 teams that were really darn good this year, and then you got, 5 teams that have a lot of promise coming for us. So it's not something where you can, in the West, where you can bide your time and just wait it out forever. Those 5 teams down there are coming sooner or later as well. So I think for us, it's balancing those 2 things. We do have a rather young group, but we're not so young that our horizon is 5-6 years in the future. Like, we're ready to win now. We've clearly done that at some level the last 2 years, and we got 2 guys who were all-stars, all-NBA guys last year. I would argue had even better years this year, and we had a lot of positives around them. But those guys are right smack in their prime, and so we're built to win now, and we're going to figure out ways to improve the team internally or externally, however we can.
All I take from that is what he said there at the end. We're built to win now. All right. So go out and win right now. And you know you need pieces and you need help this offseason to be able to do that and to win right now. So Monty, obviously, he's got a good team here. He knows he has a good team. Getting from good to great, I don't think this roster as it stands is capable of doing that. So what are you going to do this summer to be able to compete right now? That's the question. Another question that I wasn't actually really expecting to talk about is Mike Brown's contract situation. He has one more guaranteed year left on his deal and then a mutual Coach Brown and Sacramento Kings option for the fourth year of his contract. I think he's on the same timeline contract wise with general manager Monte McNair, which is pretty common. Mike has reportedly he's interested in an extension. I think he 100% deserves it. I see you in my comment section. I know it's a natural, easy reaction to make. Coaches are fall guys in the NBA, but Mike is, in my opinion, should be guaranteed to get an extension. He's nowhere near on the hot seat or anything like that. He's a really, really good head coach. Look, the Kings have had two coaches in their entire tenure in Sacramento actually make the playoffs, Rick Adelman and Mike Brown. That tells you everything you need to know. We went through a coaching carousel of hell for damn near 20 years. We don't need to go through that anymore. Mike Brown is the guy. He should be here long term. And both Monty and Mike talked a little bit about Mike's contract situation and negotiations if they're going to happen this offseason.
Coach, the athletic report on your contract situation, you got a mutual option after year 3. I'm curious, do you anticipate having some conversations about a possible extension this summer? And how much of this is top of mind for you at this point?
It's not really. At the end of the day, I have 1 year left on my deal. Everybody knows that. But I'm excited about being here. I'm excited about our future, and so I'm going to go into this summer trying to figure out how we can be better next year. And then next year trying to attack it because, again, we're disappointed we're not playing and we feel like we left some things on the table.
Mike was asked about his contract situation. There's been some reporting on that. Is that, just what's your assessment of the job, that he's done here thus far? And what would your recommendation be to ownership at this stage?
Yeah, I think, as I talked about, you look at a 2-year horizon here, which is when Coach Brown and his staff came in, and a lot of positives. We're certainly disappointed this year. Mike and I will sit down and try to figure out how we get back to where we want to get to. We'll have all those conversations here starting soon.
Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by BetterHelp. Sometimes we all need the opportunity to get something off of our chest, whether it's big or small. Things can really start to get to us, and it's important to let that stuff out and do it with a licensed professional and someone who is unbiased on your life. BetterHelp is the avenue to go if you're considering giving therapy a try. Maybe you're like me 4 or 5 years ago, right? I was not interested in therapy at all. I didn't think that my problems were big enough for therapy. I had the misconception that a lot of people have, which I have to have some pretty severe issues, maybe depression, a loss in the family, something pretty tragic happened that's when I needed to see a therapist to help me unpack something like that. And certainly if you're going through anything like that, I highly, highly encourage you to talk to someone and seek the help that you need. But if you're like me and like a lot of us where you just have daily life issues, right? Things maybe from your past that aren't a massive deal, but still weigh on you a little bit. Talking to someone is the route to go. I've been seeing my therapist, TJ, since the pandemic, and it has quite literally changed my life, changed my confidence, my professional life, my personal life, my relationship with my wife and my son. Therapy has helped me in so many ways, and I encourage you to see how it can help you too. Go to BetterHelp.com right now and consider giving therapy a try on BetterHelp. It's entirely online, designed to be flexible and suited to your schedule. Again, that's BetterHelp.com/LockedOnNBA. Get 10% off of your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/LockedOnNBA. Today's episode of the Locked On Kings podcast is also brought to you by DoorDash. Moms are a gift. I have my mom and the grandmother to my son, and then my wife became a mom 2 years ago. So Mother's Day is a very, very special day, and we want to make sure we give them the best gifts on Mother's Day that somewhat symbolize how much of a gift they are to us. And you can get gifts as thoughtful as she is with DoorDash. Select from hundreds of expertly crafted bouquets to the best of tech to self-care essentials and more, delivered right to her door. This Mother's Day, get something thoughtful for mom on DoorDash. You can surprise her with whatever she likes. DoorDash has so many different options, like, hey, maybe your mom has a sweet tooth. Is she a tech enthusiast, a beauty connoisseur, or is she outdoorsy? No matter what she is interested in, DoorDash has something for her, and they make it easy buying Mother's Day gifts. It's not just, okay, let me go to this store through DoorDash, and then I still got to figure out what the heck I'm going to get her. No, DoorDash has recommendations for gifts based off of what they're interested in and these type of establishments that you're going to get those gifts. Get all your Mother's Day gifts all in one place and get 50% off your next order up to $15 when you spend $15 on your next flour, convenience, grocery, or retail order right now with code LOCKEDONNBA. That's LOCKEDONNBA by using DoorDash today. Terms do apply. All right, let's wrap up by hearing from Mike Brown. Now, obviously, it's the general manager and front office's job to make the changes to the roster, but of course, Mike is involved in the process. And I've told you a lot over the course of this year that there have been times that I think Mike has sent clear messages to the front office with some of his rotations and his sporadic rotations at times, kind of throwing guys at the wall and hoping something sticks, right? Mike clearly has an idea of how he wants to play and guys that fit that mold and guys that do not fit that mold. So Mike will be involved in the process. Of course, Mike was asked about it, and he talked about the changes that could and maybe should happen this offseason, as well as how close this team is to being where they want to be.
Yeah, you know, every year, I think teams change. Sometimes you change a little bit more than others, and I think taking a step away from the season, taking some time away from the season, and then circling up with Monty and Wes, because they'll lead the charge in that area, but circling up with those guys, and which they're already doing, by the way, but and trying to put a game plan together, I think is going to be big. I absolutely love everybody in that locker room. We all do. They competed their tails off. We could have, in my opinion, easily won 50 games this year, 52 games this year, even with the injuries. But at the end of the day, just like, us losing Jordy and me moving Luke to the front of the bench and me having to figure out the rest of the staff, change is going to happen. And it's just a matter of what we feel at the time that we start doing it.
Similar to the question that I asked Monty about the pressures of competing with the Western Conference, I asked Mike about pressure too. He gave me a long answer talking about the pressure that the Kings feel internally, and it being much more than anything myself, you as fans, the NBA, national media, whatever it is. The pressure that we're putting on the Kings is nothing compared to what they put on themselves.
From the outside, the organization perspective, you see the massive jumps for the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Oklahoma City Thunder. And I think outside the organization, there's like a pressure of being passed up or falling behind. Does that pressure exist, I guess, internally? And if not, how do you separate yourself from the pressure of what other teams around you are doing?
Well, I mean, it's what our business is about. I don't know, and there probably is, but I feel like just like each player probably puts a tremendous amount of pressure on themselves because you want to win. You want to win at the highest level, and so for me, I'm okay with the pressure or expectations because that comes along with the job, and you kind of welcome that because, again, I think pressure is a privilege. If you don't have pressure on you, that means you're probably insignificant, or what you're doing doesn't matter to you or to anybody else. And so I feel like I embrace it. Everybody else that is part of our organization embraces it. We want it. We want to be in that position. But the reality of it is, Maddie, that it doesn't. Things in life don't do this. Again, I've been not just with Golden State, even San Antonio and Cleveland and other organizations that I've been a part of NBA Finals. our climb wasn't like this. It was here, and then you take a step back, and then hopefully you take 3 or 4 forward, and then you take 1, maybe 1.5 back, maybe 2. But so it's part of the growth process that you need to be able to go through in order to attain that championship level that you're seeking. So again, I'm 100% okay with any type of pressure that comes our way, and I truly feel our players are too. This is, and I've said this before, this is probably the first time that most of them have been in the roles that they're in and then experienced the expectations and pressure that comes along with being in those roles after being a playoff team last year. So I think it was a huge growth year in that department. But I don't think anybody can put more pressure on trying to win than we put on ourselves.
I got to tell you, I really, really appreciate this answer from Mike Brown and him taking the time to break it down the way that he does, because he's talking directly to me in a way, whether he intended it or not. I am the type of person in my life where this type of growth, which he used the hand motion, sorry, audio listeners, but constantly going up. It doesn't have to be like a steep incline or a spike, but constantly going up and not plateauing or not taking steps back. That's something that's very important to me, right? I always want to be on a constant growth cycle as much as I possibly can. And I get frustrated personally with times where I plateau, or especially times when I take steps back. I hate losing progress, right? I hate wasted opportunity or wasted time. And that's just something specific with me. And sometimes I let that frustration apply to my expectations with things around me. And I probably many times this season applied that frustration to the Sacramento Kings, right? Like just because the Kings made it to the playoffs last year does not mean that they were guaranteed to make it back at a better position and make it to the second round. And I think we think in linear progress, like it's a timeline, and that's just not always the case. So to hear Mike talk about it and break it down, it doesn't make it any more disappointing, or excuse me, it doesn't make it any less disappointing or frustrating that the Kings didn't make the playoffs this year. But just because the Kings took a little bit of a step back doesn't mean that they've plummeted and fell off a cliff, right? So I really appreciated Mike's breakdown of that. It spoke directly to me and connected to me in a lot of ways. And maybe some of you out there might be feeling the same way that I feel. To hear Mike talk about it, that's great. Now, ultimately, this is still a results league. Like he said, you're supposed to feel pressure, and nothing that you're doing really matters. So Mike still has to get results. The Kings still have to get results next season. They know that. But I appreciated that breakdown from Mike Brown about the pressure and growth and things of that nature. This is the last clip I have for you. Mike mentioned Jordy Fernandez, the new head coach of the Brooklyn Nets. We knew Jordy was going to be gone sooner or later. It's only a matter of time. Congratulations to Jordy. Very excited for him over there. We don't know if he's going to be taking any Kings coaches with him. However, Mike was asked about Jordy and who would be replacing Jordy at the front of the bench, and also who is going to be coaching the NBA Summer League team here in Sacramento. You'll be pretty pleased by his answer to that question, I think.
First of all, congratulations to Jordy and the Brooklyn Nets. Fantastic hire. It's pretty neat to see guys that you either got into the league or brought to the front of the bench for the first time, and you see them get an opportunity. And I've had a handful of guys that have been able to do that, so it's really neat. And Jordy's story compared to the other guys is really, really unique. But I'm excited for him and Kelsey and his kids and his family. And I'm excited for the Nets. But my first 2 hires when I got this job were Jordy and Luke Laux. And I told Luke if anybody leaves from the front of the bench, I'd move him to the front. So he's going to go to the front of the bench. I'm not sure, what Jordy's situation is or who he'll try to take at the end of the day. That's to be determined. But he and I are close, and we'll have conversations about that as time goes on. I'm leaning towards Doug. I think it'd be great for him to get that experience and to see what it's like to, make decisions on the fly and put a practice plan, to be in charge of putting a practice plan together and connecting a staff as well as a team and all the other ins and outs that come along with coaching a summer league team. So I think he might be the only one that, because Luke's done it before. Jay obviously has done it, and he's been a head coach at a lot of different levels before. I think Doug may be the only one that hasn't been in that position yet.
So just to break it down, Luke Laux he coached the Summer League for the Sacramento Kings last season. He's the guy that's worked with De'Aaron Fox for the last 2 years to help De'Aaron improve that jump shot, and we've seen the changes it's made to De'Aaron's game. So Luke has been a back-of-the-bench coach. He's now likely going to move to the front of the bench and replace Jordi Fernandez. I don't know if that means that he's going to step into the associate head coach spot and take over the defense, which is what Jordi was doing here in Sacramento, but Mike is making it known that Jordi is going to move to the front of the bench in some capacity, which is great. Doug Christie is who he was talking about. That was the Doug that he was talking about to coach the Summer League. Doug Christie, of course, Sacramento Kings legend. We love him here. Very excited for Doug to get the opportunity with the Summer League team. You know how great he is. I've had the opportunity to work with Doug in the media scene before. He's just so phenomenal. And I'm very excited to see how he takes this opportunity, because whether it's Doug or Luke or Jay, this coaching staff is loaded with talent that any organization in their right mind would like to poach and take away from Sacramento. They're already doing it with Jordi. Hopefully Jordi doesn't take too many familiar faces with him to Brooklyn, but this coaching staff is elite here in Sacramento. And hopefully these guys can stay as long as possible, but it's only a matter of time before another one. Like Luke Laux moving to the front of the bench wouldn't shock me at all if Luke Laux is one of those guys in the next few years who starts getting interviews around the league as well. So that was Mike Brown and Monte McNair from their press conferences earlier this week inside the practice facility. We now won't hear from either of them for a long time until Monte makes some moves this summer around draft time. Mike, we probably won't hear from or talk to until training camp next season. So lots to think about, lots to break down as we go into a massive, massive summer here. If you want to share your thoughts on what Mike and Monty said, feel free to do so. You can in the comment section on YouTube. If you want to on Twitter at MattGeorgeSack. You can also email me, mattgeorgesports@gmail.com. I still have one more episode of the player exit interviews. I think it's Davion Mitchell, Sasha Vezenkov, and one other. It might be Trey Lyles, maybe. Yeah, I think it's Trey Lyles. To hear from, or maybe it's Keon Ellis. I genuinely don't remember because I've been in bed for the last 48 hours trying to not cough up a lung. But I'll have another episode coming for you with the final exit interviews, and then we'll turn our attention to this offseason. I'm already going to have my guy Philip from Locked On Magic. He's going to join me next week here on the podcast, and we're going to talk about how big of the interest that there is for Malik Monk in Orlando. To me, that is the team to be most afraid to steal Malik away. So we'll talk about that, plus more great stuff in regards to this season and this upcoming summer. So make sure you stay locked on Kings all summer long. We'll get you through these struggle months until we're back in training camp and the start of next season in October. We don't go anywhere over the summer. Appreciate your support. Can't wait to have you join me on the next episode of the Locked On Kings podcast. Until then, you've been listening to Locked On Kings, part of the Locked On Podcast Network.